Welcome to the 15th Floor, a Radiohead reaction podcast where a Gen X father tries to convince his Gen Z son that Radiohead is the greatest band of all time by introducing him to Radiohead music, one song at a time. You'll hear him react to that song for the first time, and then I'll get to talk about how much I love that song and why that song shows that Radiohead is the greatest band of all time so far. We have hit 800 subscribers. And so we promised a mailbag episode, so our next episode will be our mailbag episode. If you haven't already checked out role reversals, we just did another role reversal, and it's a good one, right? Hopeless Opus.
Yep.
Man of many words.
Totally.
Yeah, true. But for this episode, we're going to go to 2016's A Moon-Shaped Pool to do Identikit. A Moon-Shaped Pool is their most recent studio album. It's been a long time, 7 years, and but it's still their most recent. Identikit definitely has a unique feel. It definitely has some Radiohead vibes, but it also has some things that you don't hear very often in Radiohead. Identikit was requested by Memile, Dingy Threads, Coleman Diaz, and Michael C. Sorry if we missed you and you recommended Identikit, because we always want to try to get everybody's name out there who did. A Moon-Shaped Pool is one of those really good albums that you just start at Burn the Witch and you go straight through. It's funny because it seems like it's in such great order, but it's really only the track listing is just alphabetical order. So it seems like the order is perfect, but it's alphabetical. I don't know if that ruins things for people, but... From 2016's A Moon-Shaped Pool, this is Identikit.
Ones with nothing left inside, that we all can love, that we all can love, that we all, sweet-faced ones with nothing left inside, that we all can love, that we all can love, that we all, and I see you messing me around.
I think you just said this definitely doesn't have the same Radiohead vibe I usually get.
Right.
Take this how you want, insult or not. I'm just saying it as a neutral perspective. You could easily make that, like, someone could easily like recreate this into a pop song.
Okay, yeah.
Like just by the way he sings, and obviously it's more clear, and I like that because then that kind of helps me with the mood. It's pretty simple instrumentally hearing so far. It's just kind of like a simple. No, I can't even do it. Almost a metronome sound.
Sure, yeah, the tick you're hearing. Yeah, yep.
So far, I think I'm getting a better vibe from this song than most Radiohead songs. It depends what it does, but I like the clear. I like Tom York's clear voice. But if they do this voice with his other songs that we did and that I kind of couldn't understand, maybe it would have been better. I don't know, but I kind of like this.
You mentioned the mood earlier. What's the mood so far?
Emptiness in a crowded area.
Okay.
Loneliness in a crowded area. Because, like, I hear an instrument back there, and I hear almost, like, whispers or chattery people. I maybe that's just my weird hearing. Like, I know that they didn't put, like, chattering in the background, but there's, like, an instrument that kind of makes a little sound of some sort that kind of has that. So it kind of gives out that feeling that there's people around him, but he feels lonely.
Yeah, like there is a little bit of a dialogal chirp in the background. But there's also competing, something that Radiohead doesn't do as obvious as they do here in other songs where they have competing vocals. It's not heard quite as well here. You can hear it here, but they're layered differently here and affected differently, so that you get a complete difference. Whereas in live versions, particularly the old 2012 Coachella version, where you really get those competing vocals from Ed versus Tom. But here we hear just lots of Tom and like I said, just mixed differently to sound. So I think they backed away from what they were really reaching out to do in the early live versions, but you can still hear it in their live versions, which I definitely recommend you check out.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Broken hearts make it rain. 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 Broken hearts. Pieces of a ragdoll mankind that we can create, that we can create, that we can. The pieces of a ragdoll mankind that we can create.
Sure, stop this earlier after the Broken Hearts Make It Rain, but that really gave me some Burn the Witch vibes. Just like, I'm trying to remember the Burn the Witch part, because I haven't heard the song in a while. What am I trying to get at here?
The choral sound to that.
the choral. There's, now I kind of want to hear Burn the Witch again to see why that reminds me of it so much.
You also want to hear Burn the Witch because it's
It's
an
a good
amazing
song. It's actually good.
And I hate to bring up the Coachella version again, or early 2012 versions, when they really started playing this during their King of Limbs stuff. The synth that you hear here, the synthesizer, is really strong in the live versions and gives it a really good 80s feel, after the choral sound, which I think gives it kind of a 70s feel. I almost can imagine they got the choir together from the Rocky Gonna Fly Now and said, hey, we want you to sing this same thing in very similar, with a similar feel. And therefore it kind of moves through time that way.
That we can create. When I see you missing me around, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want. When I see you missing me around, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
I couldn't tell what decade that reminded me of. Right here, it's the 70s, but it could be created in any decade. It would make sense.
Yeah.
Because it's got that 70s retro feel. It's got the 80s keyboard. It's got the 90s. What has happened in the 90s? It just would make sense in the 90s.
I agree with that. Your siblings agree with that. without me talking about it. It's another time when my daughter and I were kind of locked in on the same feeling, the song, same vibes, and I'll talk about my son's feelings about it too. But I think it does hit a lot more. It's not a timeless, a time-trapped song. It just takes you through time. What might be 90s and maybe even early 2000s is actually the message of the song or what the song feels like it's about. Yeah, I hate to keep bringing up Coachella. I just want to say again that that's a good listen because the dual vocals, the battling vocals are so much more obvious there. But here, the almost down the end of the hall echoey sound that the backup vocals have, the moon-shaped pool lines, gives it a sense that there are two people singing this back and forth at each other post breakup, which Identikit kind of has that feel. Broken hearts make it rain type of thing. Identikit is if you can imagine like cutting out magazines and using eyes of one person, nose of another person, mouth of a person, and taking someone's description. You remember the Truman Show, the movie The Truman Show, where he's trying to piece together this woman that he saw, and he just takes parts of her face to best, and he replaces them as he finds better versions of this same thing to try best to create the woman he remembers. And that's what an identikit is creating bits of a face to identify somebody else. And it comes across in this song as more of a post-mortem of a relationship rather than falling in love with someone. That's definitely how it comes across. There's a lot of emotion in this song, and especially given that this song, although written much earlier, recorded and released not long after Tom York ended his relationship with his wife Rachel. So this whole album has the fingerprint of that relationship, which is very much not like Tom York to do that. What would you give Identikit?
Give it a solid 8.
Good. Yeah, Identikit is a really good song. It's a really Radioheady song. And I like, you mentioned earlier, I like that contradiction in terms type of thing where you say that someone's surrounded by people, but alone, surrounded by people. And that's a very 90s description of anything. Anytime you can, throw out the old contradiction in terms, it sounds like you know what you're talking. You're deep, man. You're deep. Let's go to the artists. Of course, I let my younger children listen to the song. They've never heard the song either, and then they draw a picture based on how the song makes them feel. His picture says back then, and he said this was back then was the 90s. So back then it says, I like you on the right, thank you on the left. Right now, I hate you on the right, what on the left. Man, there is so much sociological exploration in this artwork. And the fact that Identikit brought it out in him.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's like, thank you. I don't know.
Italian.
Yeah. And then her picture says 1970s vibes. She had this going right away. I also like, I don't think this song gives off nothing but 1970s vibes. And again, other versions give off real strong 80s vibes. I like songs that can take you to a different time and place, but putting you in that time and place does not actually take away from the message of the song, which could be timeless, which could be very much locked in time. From our previous videos, we've got a comment by Thrimpton, a longtime watcher. Thrimpton says, for years, Climbing Up the Walls was one of my least favorite songs from OK Computer. That was a sentiment echoed by a few other people. I think the Dude said the same thing. I will go into this in a second. Then recently something clicked, and it has been my current favorite song for a while. My favorite thing about this track is the soundscape that Johnny, I assume, has layered underneath it all. And I think the long outro is sensational and really should not have been clipped in your video. Just a little... And that's an editing thing on my part. Of course, Jacob heard the outro, but I clipped it because I'm always trying to keep videos right there around that 20-minute mark. Turns out we could have used more time, I guess, so I maybe should not have clipped it, so apologies. That's a good sentiment for Climbing Up the Walls, because Climbing Up the Walls was easily my least favorite song on OK Computer for a long time. Now, to say it's my least favorite song on one of my favorite albums of all time means it's awesome. It's just not as awesome as the rest. And just like that comment, at some point it just clicked with me, and I suddenly really enjoyed not just Climbing Up the Walls, which I enjoyed the most out of the back half of the album, but I started to enjoy the whole back half of the album more than I did previously. And you have already talked about how you actually haven't downloaded any Radiohead songs, and there will be a time, hopefully, where you'll go back and say, okay, let me readdress this music that my dad introduced me to, and you might even find that there were some songs that didn't hit hard the first time that will hit better the second time. And then with more and more listens, you'll say, oh yeah, this is great stuff. If you don't, then you failed at life, and that's okay. A lot of people fail at life, and right.
Newbie.
But he's had some good Imagine Dragons stuff. The last several reactions by me, role reversals, I've responded well to, because I like good music. And so do you. Identikit, you gave it an 8 out of 10. Pretty solid. Like I said, next video is mailbag episode. I will say that we really appreciate, especially all the people that are longtime watchers who came up with questions. I know that, again, we've kind of mentioned this already. It's a small channel, and it's not like the world is waiting with bated breath to find out what our answers to these questions are. If you don't mind, I think we're going to look at the questions before. I've already seen them, and so I'm going to let Jacob look at them too. That way he just has time to... There's a lot of, hey, what's your favorite this? What's your favorite that? And of course, go with your gut reaction, but also I want you to have a good explanation of that. So if you guys don't mind, we're going to do it that way. Thank you again for all your likes. Please be sure to like this. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Comment, just say anything down below. We're happy to comment back. Appreciate all your comments. Appreciate all your support. Continue to love one another. Keep listening to music together. You're now leaving
The 15th floor.